Good evening, everyone. The topic today is more to do with cloud, data center, benefits for business. That's why we thought at least we can share whatever we have come across and the current digital expectations moving from corporate digital towards customer digital, how it benefits to the banks, especially when it comes to solutions and services, part of data, and the kind of expectations which is coming from customer and bank. And we have a diversified panel where people do have their different visions on their cloud experience. And they do have some business case, which we would take it up from them so that it's more beneficiary for us. To start with, madam, how the cloud and business benefits for your bank and how it benefits for the especially business in terms of customer or even for regulators, how we can make it out. And the size and volume really matters to go for cloud.
Thank you, Suresh, and good evening to everybody. I think this whole cloud thing is obviously it starts with a fear. So there's a Greek term which says nephophobia. I think all of us in the banking industry, at least the CTOs, the CIOs, the CXOs in the banking industry actually start off with that, with a fear of the cloud. Nephophobia is, I think, prevalent amongst all of us. But I think the reality is the fact that there's no point fearing the cloud. I think as in any fear, you've got to understand it. You've got to figure out how to use it more effectively, and that's typically what banks like us and Federal Bank, etc., has done. So there is always this overhang of security, and is it safe, is it secure, etc. But I think the only way you can overcome that is actually to go in and use it, and we in the bank do use it. So a couple of cases where I think we found it very useful. One is obviously on what I call kind of a hybrid model. There are typically lots of instances when banks like us need a certain amount of computing, but we need to increase that computing when there is a campaign, for example, when there is a special drive, like recently when we were the ticketing partners for the India-Trivandrum T20 match in Trivandrum last year. We had the need to enhance computing at the drop of a hat, and therefore we went for the cloud. So this whole hybrid model where you can scale up when required, scale down when you come back to normal business is a huge opportunity for us. It helps us optimize our costs very effectively. It helps us make sure we have recourse to some computing. The analogy is really if you're living in a studio apartment and you have guests coming and you want to suddenly, get another extra bedroom, this is a way to do that. That's how we do it. I think there are other applications. For example, our whole Office 365 is on the cloud. We've used that very effectively because otherwise we would need to spend a fair amount of money on premise solution, e-learning. So some of examples that we have. So I think the first objective for all of us is really to get over that fear of the cloud and say that, the cloud has its benefits. You've got to know, you've got to overcome your fear, learn how to use it, and then take it forward.
Since you are saying more to do with education and specific in terms of some business cases like getting that match organized, getting those details are able to do it. Sure, then from Mr. Prasanna is more to do with innovation. So today one constraint for him, we have put him speak cloud and data center related without talking blockchain. So he has to talk to us explaining as much as cloud without blockchain.
So recently we have seen this, one of the example, right, IPL. And people used to go earlier in the stadiums and to watch matches. And now this business model has recently changed. Now, people can really go on to the Hotstar and that kind of an applications and can see the matches or any other things. Like IPL is one of the example. And IPL CEO, the way he has posted on LinkedIn, so many, I think almost 8 million people were watching the finals. All of a sudden, from 1 million to, in last few hours, surge of those many viewers coming onto that platform. That's the new business model coming in. Not only for IPL is one of the example. If you look at the demonetization, and after that we come up with a very good use cases like an UPI or Aadhaar, and how UPI is getting utilized by various other platforms like Google Tej or Bheem, or maybe in the next we will talk about WhatsApp. How do you really come to that customer expectation, right? This was a question was always there in front of banks. And the way we used to estimate earlier, like for 5 years, how much will be the surge of customers year on year, and we used to make some estimation of the hardwares. Now things has changed. The business model immediately becomes disruptive. So how do we really go ahead with that? So that's how the cloud adoption is very much important. And if you talk about can we live without a cloud next 5-6 years, or although cloud is there since last 10 years, the answer itself is like no. That's I think the answer to leave away with the fear, but adoption is really much important. And although there are some constraints around data security by which government has asked all the financial institutions to bring on your data or if it is available outside. And that's a challenge again cloud service provider to bring on everything within India. So looking at overall journey, I think hybrid kind of an approach which always help organization to go ahead with the cloud adoption. Because the services which are available from those core services like internet banking and core banking typically for in bank side, these players or service provider are not cloud ready. When I say, what do you mean cloud ready? It means that end-to-end cloud readiness with your app server, web server, database server, everything coupled up in by a cloud service provider, that kind of a SLA and that is not it being matured as of now. Although we can really deploy and start working on it, that's another opportunity. I think these service providers also coming up with their core solution in the cloud. At the same time, institutions should start something hybrid approach, like bring on some learning management. As Madam rightly said, same approach we have also taken, going ahead with our applications like HR or learning management, which are not critical, not relevant to the actual financial customer, and practice how to deploy and what is the overall management cost. If you look at the management cost of managing same application which is on your normal data center and cloud, the cost on the cloud is more. But there are advantages around that. How can we really satisfy your customer when, like a few years back, when Flipkart has done first sale and all of a sudden it has went down. That's how the learning has started. So let's learn from that. And I think cloud adoption is the only way when we are bringing on blockchain kind of a thing in the future. And when blockchain says that it is a decentralized, that's the future of a cloud. We'll certainly see after 5 years, clouds will be all decentralized clouds. So.
Anyway, since you have crossed the RBI rules where you should not speak about blockchain, but since your flavor is more to do with innovation and taking it out, but anyway, the concept you said like it's more to do with more volumes, the kind of expectations coming from business towards business, ensuring through regulators in terms of delivering those services on time and trying to handle as much as from the support functions, especially from HR, learning all those things are already in place and it will enable us to take it up. From your side, like how you see the migration and other elements part of the cloud side, where cloud people do have some elements today as service, whether that is enough or we are looking something more or we want to have something more to do with business, which cloud people should also be prepared and they should start delivering to us.
Typically, I will say cloud is inevitable, cloud is a must, and there is no substitute. So that's the fact of life. Let's accept it. If somebody is late, he has to start now. When coming back to our point, I'm from a broking industry, from the capital market. In the broking industry, we are not using the cloud and this thing for the trading platform. Apart from that, all our support systems are on the on the cloud, whether it's on-prem or a public cloud. It depends on the importance and it depends on the application to application. But they are on the cloud and we need to move. That last 2-3 years, things are moving and shifting towards that area. So that journey is inevitable. You have to be part of that journey. And coming back to the other point is that in our area, there are typical some support applications and other things which will be there. The core trading platform will continue to be on a premises or a colo. So that's the entire stuff. Now we have another, say, CRMs or other applications which have a customer data, which have a critical data, sales data, or other support system. So that is a mixed breed. You need to decide whether it's on-prem or whether it's a public cloud. The challenge is that the way the data is growing, now few years back we were talking about TBs. Now we are already into petabytes and zettabytes and other things. So that is where you have to have a balancing act. What is right and what is fit where. That keeps on learning what Prasanna said, learning where if something is right, you put it on a public cloud or you have an on-prem cloud. Typically in our case, we moved many things on a hyper-convert system last year. So now we have a complete mixed breed and even the trading platform is on a hyper-convert system. So that's the entire things we are doing, a balancing act. And it will keep on continuing that only.
Okay. So you are focusing more on the business benefits, which balancing in terms of volumes, and in terms of the new changes or regulatory, which you can fit in faster and try to take it up. So from your side, like what specific you feel or you felt during the discussion, you are more empowered towards like how the regulators do take it up from the cloud side, but still as part of the business benefits, how still your bank is going outside world and try to connect and try to bring it out.
Yeah, good evening all. Actually, I would like to just bring up one use case which we have done it in Doha Bank. We were having a crisis last year in month of June where we were sanctioned by 5 different GCC countries. And at that time, we were having a very crisis situation in terms of how to manage the customer's request because we are having a major chunk of the banking from the NRIs in India. So in that case, people were taking out their money and they were remitting to India. Just it was a panic situation because Doha or Qatar was not having a good situation out there, but definitely they were having a good financial power. So they sustained up to 40 years. It was claimed by the Doha Qatar government on that. In that case, we were having one application which is for serving the customers of Doha Bank on cloud. It is just taking a request of the payment related information, and it was using cloud at 10% on a nominal day. But during that particular period of 15 to 20 days, it was shoot up to 500%. So to scale up that particular level, on-prem solution will never work. How much hardware you can put in place, how much cluster you can create, how much fallback servers you can create, or how much high availability you are having in your data center. But by just adding few cores, few GB of RAM and processing speed of cloud, we can sustain that particular period, which can give us our customer as a kind of a service, which will be at a premium level. So that customer will not feel that whether due to this crisis, my banking is not working, or let it be whatever the situation, my bank will work. So in that kind of a model, we are working towards that. And definitely cloud is a kind of a area which will help all sort of request or all sort of implementation during that particular bank. And it will give a kind of a leverage to the bank to serve that customer at the optimum level. So customer will not feel that whether my bank is not at par with the technology which is going on in the market. So this is a business case which we have taken up in that particular time, in a difficult time, and it really worked. So I would say, as we were talking about, like cloud is a must, and it is having a future. So definitely it is having a kind of a, I would say, a crucial part to play in the banking industry. Okay. And definitely about the regulator, there are some challenges are there about the data privacy and other portion of it. Definitely will overrule or overcome over a period of time when there is a relaxation in some of the guideline, or if we are complying with all the information which is getting stored in cloud. Definitely, we can touch with all that.
So the month-end pressures, volumes, you can fine-tune in the last minute. You can have the console control. So those are the benefits part of cloud which you are trying to empower and try to bring the business benefits in the last minute also.
Sure,
That's what you're trying to do. But you have some concerns since regulators do have some rigid points which the same cloud communities has to come back, and how they have to create the confidence to regulators so that we can use the solutions.
Definitely, yeah.
So the question is again, like how cloud is matured for financial services and bank, and how you see the solutions. You would have heard from people to say security is a threat, acceptance is a threat, but it is serving a lot more benefits are available. So from your view.
Yeah, first is right. Every bank has a data center, that's a reality. And every bank has adopted certain cloud technologies. In fact, in recent times, Microsoft announced that top 4 banks, HDFC, Kotak, ICICI, and Axis have adopted cloud for some of their non-core operations like learning, testing, and other services. But they still maintain their core application or core banking services within their premises. That's because you don't want to expose, you don't want to lose control. But at the same time, right, when you're going to the cloud, okay, the benefits are coming in. Say, for example, Ali talked about some of the crises he faced and how exactly cloud helped them to overcome the crisis in terms of scalability. In our own backyard, we faced the same crisis 2 years back when demonetization came into picture. The payment banking system, payment banking providers actually had a major time in terms of how they can scale. With the adoption of cloud, they were able to adopt and scale much faster and easier. That is one. Second thing also, right, RBI also encourages in terms of how exactly cloud can be adopted. But they also put a cap saying that, on the mention that large banks cannot adopt major cloud benefits because they have already invested in infrastructure in a much bigger way. But they also encourage that cooperative banks can adopt cloud in a much better way so that they can provide the same level of services like large banks. But the question here is, when the adoption comes into picture, the challenge also comes in terms of how the security is being defined. What is the data privacy? What is the governance risk that has been enabled on that part? And that's exactly where security plays a major role in cloud adoption and how security can be controlled or what sort of measures we can adopt. For example, what physical access is provided? What is the identity has been allowed on? What data set and where it resides? And also, right, many of the cloud providers are not very transparent in sharing in terms of where the cloud data is being stored as well. Because some people say that it's serving within the boundaries, but where the backup data are actually serving. All those things become a question mark. Instead, there's a lot of transparency is required. Because one, if you look at in terms of all major applications that are being developed, are developed in a very open environment. But it's getting deployed in the cloud. It's actually deployed in a very controlled environment. In that scenario, right, it opens up a lot of vulnerabilities to be exposed. How those vulnerabilities can be managed? Because it's not only just defined in terms of data privacy, but in terms of platform security also comes into picture. If you look at in terms of the Bank of America's chairman and CIO, once he mentioned that banks are not facing banks as a competitor, but the platform providers as the competitors. When platforms that can adopt and bring in, the security also comes into the picture. Security is a major threat that actually they have to look into.
Great insights. We had a typical vendor norms, like, no, at least, except disclaimer, you have spoken everything. So thanks for it. And Prasanna, next to you for that, how do you still feel innovation plays a different role when you talk about especially the benefits, business benefits, especially from data center, including blockchain also?
I think that's a need of time, right? What we have done way back, adoption of PCs at branches, or coming your banking experience on ATM, or followed by internet banking, followed by all of a sudden in mobile banking. These were always part of innovation. So innovation is always bringing on something better what we are doing. And it is always a part of our journey. And considering digital banking, right? It's something, surge of apps or automation, adoption of API banking and analytics and so on. So wherein we always look at digital transformation of a bank can be in 3 major areas. One area is all around remove or transform all your front offices with apps. So whatever we are doing for your customers, like customer onboarding, which you used to do on branches, can we not have an app in the customer's hand, or some guy who is helping a customer in person, and complete onboarding of a customer with the help of an application or a mobile apps. So that's a transformation of your front offices. And similarly, you can look at middle offices. Can you not transform your mid offices with APIs, or identify some of those operational processes and with the help of a robotic process automation, bring on those to the next level. And finally, your back offices should be on blockchain or AI or big data, these things. So how can we really adopt that journey fast? Either I depend upon IT team in the banks, which is not at all possible based upon the bandwidth which is available, because we are not typically IT companies. Some of the exceptions are available outside of India. They drive their own IT companies within a bank. But if you look at Indian scenario, we have to really rely on some of them who can really give an agile output. So those are the fintech companies wherein we can really, if you look at our services, can I not rent out some of our services to these guys, fintech guys, within my infrastructure? So this is what we bring on innovation kind of a journey to the banking. Can I not bring some kind of a biometric experience on ATM, or usage of the Aadhaar instead of doing cards, or within a card also we are bringing on biometric cards. So these are all new things which is coming into the customer's hand. And how do we drive it? With the help of innovation or with the help of a fintech adoption, which requires some easy and immediate experimentation. And for every fintech, I cannot go and say, please come and take the access of my network and take the access of some of my APIs like UPI and please bring on some innovation. That will be a time-consuming and resource-consuming exercise. If the same thing, if I make available on a cloud, all the experimentation which he wants, data sampling or APIs, as in a sandbox. So that is one experiment which we are doing as of now. Let's bring on all the APIs and a pseudo core banking experience, everything, all the infrastructure on cloud, which is not touching to my core production environment, and which is typically available openly to all this community, wherein they come openly, register themselves and do the experimentation, immediate, fail fast or a success fast, and this result is in front of you, which is going to helpful not only one bank, but as a collaboration, it can be helpful for a whole community. So that is what one of the agenda which we drive at DCB Bank with one program like Innovation Carnival. Because we understand Innovation Index is one of the index which India drives. And India, among all those 195, 196 countries, we rank as a 60. It means that we are far not being ranked compared to some of the small countries like Israel or Germany, although we have some challenges around population and education. But I think these drives like Digital India or some of this recent government is coming up and things are really falling in a good way with surge of UPI, GST, Aadhaar and adoption of Aadhaar. And at the same time, we bank also understanding how we can utilize these available ecosystem and these enthusiast startups, fintechs coming all together. I think we can provide everything to them to do the experimentation in line with the security compliance. Only thing if you have a robust infrastructure available. So that's the answer, and we are looking at building some regulatory sandbox with peer banks, and I think IDRBT also taking initiative into this exercise. That's in a nutshell I wanted to
yeah. Great insights. Even Hackathon has done some great job for your bank and you got so many ideas to do it. But since anyway you said 60 because India at least we have so many things to implement. So innovation comes second, but implement comes first. Absolutely. So let us stick to that implementations. Whatever we have so far innovated can get us to the next level. Madam, since you said innovation, they are doing as much as from the bank. In your case, specific anything on the product side, business side, which is elevated with a case study, which you can show.
Okay. Yeah, so I think a couple of examples where we've used the cloud more effectively. One is something that we do every day, which is our mobile banking platform is powered by a security algorithm called Trustier. The Trustier is actually hosted on the cloud, and we use that effectively. The rationale for that going on the cloud was, and we partnered with IBM for this, was the fact that if it was on-prem, we would never know how much capacity to deploy on it because it goes through peaks and troughs very often. When we have a campaign, we have a large number of people enrolling for mobile banking, they need to go through the Trustier algorithm before they get onboarded. So that's one example. The other I alluded to very briefly earlier when we did when we became the cricketing partner or the banking partner or the payment partner, the ticketing partner for the India-Sri Lanka match in Trivandrum. And a match was happening in Trivandrum after I think about 40 years or something. So there was the first 15 minutes we had expected huge crowds, and rightly so, we had huge crowds coming onto the platform. And that was only possible because we got it done through the cloud, because I think on-premise we would not have been. So I think a couple of examples like that. We have some more thing. I think anything which is peak and trough, we now very clearly go onto the cloud itself rather than investing. But a couple of other, risks related to it, which I think is important to know. One is, the application itself should be developed in a fashion that lends itself to be done that way. Otherwise, you could end up with issues that the application is not supporting that. And I think we need to therefore have more and more application developers who recognize this and say, yes, we can cater to that. You can do these peaks and troughs. The other is what I think Prasanna very briefly referred to, which is the cost. Sometimes we run the risk that the cost of doing all this on the cloud may end up being higher than the cost of an on-premise solution. I think the jury is still out on how much we can get in terms of cost benefits. We're clearly seeing some benefits, no doubt about it, but I think it will take another couple of years for it to mature enough for us to be confident about the fact that the costs are truly and definitely lower than an on-premise solution.
So since you are mentioning so many business opportunities are there, same cost is also coming up, but still we have to use it effectively so that let the business solution address first, over a period of time we'll get mature to connect to that.
The benefits will come.
So